The Gentle Mystery of December 25, A Journey Through Time. Close your eyes and let yourself drift backward through the centuries. Tonight, we're going to explore one of history's most enduring questions, a question so familiar that we rarely pause to ask it anymore. Why do we celebrate Christmas on December 25th? The answer is not what you might expect. It's a story that winds through ancient Rome and Jerusalem, through the debates of early Christian scholars, through the darkest nights of winter when our ancestors looked to the heavens for hope. So settle in, breathe deeply, and let's walk together through this gentle mystery. Part 1. The Silence of the Scriptures. Picture, if you will, a quiet monastery library in medieval France. It's the year 1150, and a young monk named Brother Thomas sits at his wooden desk, carefully copying the Gospels by candlelight. His fingers are stained with ink, and his breath makes small clouds in the cold air. As he transcribes the story of Jesus' birth, the journey to Bethlehem, the humble stable, the visiting shepherds, he pauses. He's copied these words dozens of times, but tonight a question troubles his mind. Nowhere in these sacred texts does it say when this momentous birth occurred. Brother Thomas is not the first to notice this absence, and he won't be the last. The Bible, for all its detailed genealogies and careful chronologies, offers no date for Christmas. The Gospel of Luke mentions a census ordered by Caesar Augustus. Matthew speaks of King Herod and a guiding star, but neither Matthew, Mark, Luke, nor John provides what we might call a birth certificate. No month, no day, no season is explicitly named. This silence is our first clue that the date of December 25th came from somewhere else, from a process of reasoning, tradition, and perhaps compromise that took place over many centuries. Let your mind drift now to the earliest days of Christianity, to the small communities scattered across the Roman Empire in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. These early Christians celebrated Easter, the resurrection, as their primary holy day. The exact date of Jesus' birth seemed less important to them than the fact of his life, death, and rising. They were more concerned with how to live according to his teachings than with marking the anniversary of his arrival. But humans are storytelling creatures. We mark time with celebrations. We need moments to gather, to remember, to honor what we hold sacred. And so, gradually, questions began to emerge. If Easter was so carefully calculated, shouldn't the birth of the Savior also be commemorated? And if so, when? The answers that different communities arrived at tell us something beautiful about the way traditions form, not handed down complete from above, but assembled piece by piece, prayer by prayer, across generations of wondering. Part 2. The Early Guesses. Let's drift now to the year 200 AD, to the sun-warmed city of Alexandria in Egypt. This is one of the great intellectual centers of the ancient world, where the famous library once stood, where scholars debate philosophy and theology in columned courtyards. Here, a Christian teacher named Clement mentions in his writings that some believers celebrate Jesus' birth on the 20th of May, while others prefer the 19th or 20th of April. In another corner of the Roman world, perhaps in North Africa, some Christians have settled on January 6th. This date will eventually become important as Epiphany, the celebration of the visit of the Magi, but for some early believers, it marked the birth itself. Why such different dates? Imagine these early Christian communities as islands of faith in a vast pagan sea. Communication between them was slow and uncertain. Each group had to work with the information they possessed, the traditions they inherited, and their own careful reading of Scripture. They were, in essence, trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Some scholars attempted calculations based on other dates mentioned in the Bible. There was a Jewish tradition that great prophets died on the same calendar date as their conception. If Jesus died at Passover, and the Gospels are clear about this, then perhaps he was also conceived at Passover. Count forward 9 months from the spring Passover, and you arrive somewhere in December or early January. It's a beautiful piece of reasoning, isn't it? Symmetrical, meaningful, tying the end of Jesus' earthly life to its beginning. But was it accurate? That question would trouble theologians for centuries. Let yourself imagine the debates. Picture a gathering of bishops in the 4th century, their voices echoing in a stone chamber. Some argue for historical accuracy. We must discover the true date. Others suggest that spiritual significance matters more than historical precision. Still others point out that the gospel writers themselves didn't seem concerned with the exact date, so why should they be? These conversations weren't dry or academic. For these early Christians, living in an empire that often persecuted them, every aspect of their faith was charged with meaning, with risk, with hope. Deciding when to celebrate Christ's birth was part of the larger project of defining what it meant to be Christian in a world that didn't understand them and often wanted them gone. Part 3. The Roman World in December. Now let's step outside the churches and monasteries for a moment. Let's walk through the streets of Rome itself in late December, around the year 300 AD. The city is alive with celebration. Garlands of evergreen hang from doorways. People exchange gifts. There's feasting and merriment, even though winter's cold has settled over the empire. You see, the Romans, like most ancient peoples, had their own midwinter celebrations. The most famous was Saturnalia, a festival honoring Saturn, the god of agriculture and time. Saturnalia typically ran from December 17th to the 23rd, though sometimes it extended further. During these days, normal social rules were relaxed. Masters might serve their slaves. Gambling was permitted. People wore colorful clothes instead of their usual togas. It was a time of reversal, of joy, of light in the darkness. But there was another celebration too, and this one is crucial to our story. It was called Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of the unconquered sun. This festival fell on December 25th. The unconquered sun was a deity promoted especially by Emperor Aurelian in the 270s AD. The cult represented a kind of solar monotheism, the sun as the supreme god above all others. December 25th was chosen because it fell right after the winter solstice, that turning point when the days begin, almost imperceptibly, to grow longer again. To ancient peoples living without electric lights, this shift was profound. The sun was being reborn. Light was conquering darkness. Now, let yourself wonder, is it merely coincidence that Christians eventually settled on this same date for Christmas? Or was something more complex happening? Some historians have argued that the Church deliberately chose December 25th to Christianize a pagan holiday, to give converts something familiar, to overlay a Christian meaning onto an existing celebration. It's a tidy explanation, and there may be some truth to it, but the reality appears to be more subtle, more layered. Part 4. The Calculation Tradition. Let's return to those scholarly monks and theologians, hunched over their manuscripts, wrestling with mathematics and theology. There was a separate tradition of calculation that had nothing to do with pagan holidays, or so its adherents claimed. Picture a Christian scholar in Rome around the year 200, perhaps a man named Hippolytus. He sits with a commentary on the book of Daniel, and he's trying to work out the chronology of salvation history. Based on his reading of Scripture and his understanding of ancient calendars, he calculates that Jesus was conceived on March 25th. Add 9 months, and you arrive at December 25th for the birth. This same calculation appears in North Africa, where the brilliant theologian Augustine would later write about it. March 25th became celebrated as the Annunciation, the day the angel Gabriel told Mary she would bear a son. December 25th, exactly 9 months later, became the Nativity. Is this calculation correct? Almost certainly not, at least not in a strict historical sense. But it reveals something important. Christians were trying to work out the date through their own internal logic, using the tools of their time: Scripture, tradition, and mathematical reasoning. In the eastern parts of the Christian world, scholars made similar calculations but arrived at different dates. If you place the conception on April 6th, you get a birth date of January 6th. which is why many Eastern churches originally celebrated Christmas on that day, and why Armenian Christians still do. These weren't cynical compromises with paganism. They were sincere attempts to honor a sacred event by pinpointing it in time, even without explicit biblical guidance. The scholars involved probably knew they couldn't be certain, but they needed a date, and they did their best. Imagine the satisfaction a monk might feel, having worked through the mathematics, believing he'd solved an ancient puzzle. Imagine him sharing his conclusion with his community, and the community gradually adopting this date for their celebration. This is how traditions are born, not from a single decree, but from countless small decisions that accumulate over time. Part 5: Constantine's World. Now we arrive at a turning point in our story. Let yourself drift to the year 312 AD. A man named Constantine is marching toward Rome with his army. He's one of several rivals fighting for control of the empire. On the eve of a crucial battle, the Battle of Milvian Bridge, Constantine has a vision or a dream. Accounts vary, but the essence is this: he sees a symbol of Christ and hears a message. In this sign, you will conquer. Constantine orders his soldiers to paint Christian symbols on their shields. Against the odds, he wins the battle. In gratitude, or perhaps in genuine conversion, he becomes a patron of Christianity. The following year, 313 AD, he and his co-emperor issue the Edict of Milan, effectively legalizing Christianity throughout the empire. Everything changes. Christianity moves from the margins to the mainstream. Churches can be built openly. Bishops can meet without fear. Christian holidays can be celebrated publicly. But this transition creates new challenges. How do you take a faith that developed in small, tight-knit communities and scale it up to an empire? How do you standardize practices when different regions have different traditions? How do you ensure unity when there's so much diversity? These questions applied to Christmas as much as to anything else. Some communities celebrated on December 25th, others on January 6th, still others on different dates entirely. For an empire seeking unity, this hodgepodge of local customs was a problem. Picture a meeting of bishops in the mid-4th century. They're trying to establish a common calendar of feast days. The discussion about Christmas is probably long and complicated. Some argue for historical accuracy. Others advocate for the date already popular in Rome. Still others worry about the proximity to pagan festivals. Will celebrating on December 25th confuse the faithful? Will they think they're still honoring the unconquered sun? But practical considerations matter too. Rome is the center of the empire. The Bishop of Rome, what we would later call the Pope, is increasingly influential. If Rome celebrates on December 25th, perhaps other churches should align with that practice for the sake of unity. And besides, the symbolism is powerful. Christ as the true light of the world, born at the darkest time of year. Christ as the true unconquered Son, not the pagan deity but the Son of God. The date doesn't have to be taken from the pagans. It can be claimed from them, transformed, given new meaning. By the year 350 or so, Pope Julius I has officially recognized December 25th as the date of Christ's birth for the Church in Rome. Gradually, over the next several decades, other churches adopt the same date. Not immediately. These things take time, but steadily, century by century. Part 6: The Symbolism of Light. Let's pause here and consider the deeper symbolism that made December 25th so resonant for Christians, quite apart from any calculation or political consideration. Imagine you're living in the ancient world without artificial light. When winter comes, darkness comes with it. The days grow shorter and shorter until, around December 21st, you reach the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. Our ancestors feared on some level that the sun might keep diminishing, that the darkness might eventually win. But then in the days after the solstice, something miraculous happens. The days start to lengthen, not by much at first, just a few minutes, but it's a sign the light is returning. Life will continue. Spring will come again. Every culture had rituals around this turning point. The Romans celebrated the unconquered sun. In Northern Europe, people lit bonfires and brought evergreen branches indoors as symbols of persisting life. In Persia, there were festivals of light. The human impulse to celebrate the return of light is universal. Christianity tapped into this deep well of meaning. The Gospel of John opens with majestic poetry. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Can you hear the resonance? The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Jesus is called the light of the world. To celebrate his birth at the darkest time of year, when physical light is at its minimum, creates a powerful parallel. Just as the sun is reborn and the days begin to lengthen, so the sun is born and brings spiritual light into the world's darkness. This symbolism appears everywhere in Christian Christmas tradition. We light candles. We sing about light. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appear. The imagery of darkness and light, of hope born in the midst of despair, is central to the Christmas story as Christians came to understand it. So even if the date was chosen partly for practical reasons, to align with existing celebrations or to accommodate calculation traditions, it carried profound meaning. The date was not arbitrary. It spoke to something deep in the human soul, our need for light in darkness, for hope in despair, for the promise that death and cold and night are not the final word. Part 7. When was Jesus actually born? Now, let's address the question that might be troubling your curious mind. If December 25th was chosen for all these complex reasons, when was Jesus actually born? The honest answer is, we don't know. We can't know with certainty, but we can make some educated guesses by looking at the clues in the Gospels and what we know about history. Imagine the hills of Judea in the time of King Herod. The Gospel of Luke tells us that shepherds were watching their flocks by night when angels appeared to announce Jesus' birth. This detail has led some scholars to suggest a spring or summer date. In the harsh winter of the Judean highlands, shepherds typically didn't keep their flocks in the fields overnight. They brought them to shelter, so the presence of shepherds in the fields might indicate a warmer season. But this argument isn't conclusive. Some shepherds did keep watch in winter, especially in the south near Bethlehem, where the climate was milder. And Luke might have mentioned the shepherds for symbolic reasons, as representatives of the humble and lowly to whom the gospel first came, rather than as a precise chronological detail. Matthew's gospel mentions the star and the visit of the Magi, those mysterious wise men from the east. Attempts have been made to correlate the Star of Bethlehem with actual astronomical events, a conjunction of planets perhaps, or a comet. These calculations have suggested various dates, none of them in December. Then there's the census mentioned by Luke, the decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered, which brings Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem. Roman records don't clearly confirm a census at the exact time required, and it seems unlikely that a Roman census would be conducted in winter when travel was most difficult. Some scholars have suggested that Jesus might have been born in the spring, perhaps around Passover time. Others have argued for September or October, during the Jewish Festival of Tabernacles. The early church father John Chrysostom, writing in the late 300s, mentioned that some Christians in the East believed Christ was born in September. The most likely conclusion, the one that most historians accept today, is that we simply don't have enough information to determine the date of Jesus' birth with any precision. It could have been spring, summer, fall, or even early winter. It almost certainly wasn't December 25th. But here's the beautiful thing. It doesn't matter. Not really. The early Christians eventually realized this too. What mattered was that the birth happened, that God entered human history, that the story of redemption unfolded. The exact date was less important than the meaning of the event. Part 8. The spread of Christmas. Let yourself now imagine Christianity spreading across the world, carrying with it the December 25th date like a seed that will grow in many different soils. In the centuries after Constantine, Christianity became the dominant religion of Europe. Roman missionaries traveled to Britain, to Gaul, to Spain, to the Germanic lands. Wherever they went, they brought their calendar of holy days, including Christmas on December 25th. But here's where our story becomes interesting again. These lands already had their own midwinter celebrations, and those celebrations were ancient, woven into the very fabric of how people understood the seasons and their place in the cosmos. Picture the Germanic tribes of northern Europe. For them, midwinter was the time of Yule, a festival involving feasting, the burning of a large log, the Yule log, and celebrations that lasted for days. Trees were sacred to many Germanic peoples, the oak for Thor, the ash for Odin. They brought evergreen branches into their homes as a promise that life would return after winter. When Christian missionaries arrived, they faced a choice: forcibly suppress these beloved traditions or find ways to transform them. Generally, they chose the latter. Christmas absorbed elements of Yule. The Yule log became a Christmas tradition. Evergreen trees found their way into Christian homes, eventually evolving into the Christmas tree tradition we know today. In Rome itself, some elements of Saturnalia persisted in Christmas celebrations: the giving of gifts, the spirit of reversal and merriment, the special foods and drink. The church couldn't entirely suppress these practices, and perhaps didn't want to. Joy and celebration, after all, were appropriate responses to the Incarnation. This process of cultural blending happened again and again as Christianity spread. In Mexico, after the Spanish conquest, Christmas incorporated elements of indigenous midwinter festivals. In Ethiopia, Christmas developed its own unique traditions quite different from European practices. In the Philippines, under Spanish colonial rule, Christmas took on characteristics unlike anywhere else in the world. The date of December 25th remained constant, a unifying element across diverse cultures. But how people celebrated, what it meant to them, the specific practices they followed, these varied enormously. This should give us pause to reflect. When we ask, why is Christmas on December 25th? We're really asking about a long, complex process of cultural negotiation and religious evolution. There isn't one simple answer, but rather a tapestry of answers, woven together over centuries. Part 9. Challenges and controversies. Not everyone accepted December 25th without question. Let your mind drift now to various moments of resistance and debate across the centuries. In the early centuries, some Christian groups called Gnostics rejected the idea of celebrating Jesus' birth at all. For them, Jesus was primarily a spiritual being, and his physical birth, if it happened at all, was less important than his teachings and his resurrection. They saw Christmas celebrations as too focused on the material, the bodily, the earthly. Later, during the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, some reformers questioned Christmas celebrations. The Puritans were particularly skeptical. They looked at the Bible and saw no commandment to celebrate Christ's birth. They looked at Christmas traditions and saw pagan influences everywhere: the feasting, the decorations, the revelry. They suspected that December 25th was indeed chosen to accommodate pagans, and they wanted no part of it. In the 1640s and 1650s, when Puritans controlled the English Parliament, they actually banned Christmas celebrations. Shops were ordered to stay open on December 25th. Anyone caught feasting or decorating could be punished. It was a remarkable moment, Christmas outlawed in a Christian country. Imagine being a child in London during those years, perhaps in 1647 or 1648. Your parents whisper that you mustn't celebrate Christmas, that the authorities have forbidden it. But you remember previous years, the special foods, the warmth of family gathering, the sense that this day was different from all others. How strange it must have felt to pretend it was an ordinary day. The ban didn't last. When the monarchy was restored in 1660, Christmas came back. People had missed it too much. The Puritan experiment showed something important. Whatever the complex historical origins of the December 25th date, Christmas had become deeply meaningful to ordinary people. They weren't celebrating out of historical accuracy or theological sophistication. They were celebrating because this day, this festival, this gathering of family and community had become precious to them. In colonial America, the Puritans also tried to suppress Christmas. In Massachusetts, celebrating Christmas was illegal from 1659 to 1681. The Puritan leaders argued that it was a corrupt, Catholic-influenced tradition with no biblical basis. They preferred a simpler, more austere faith. But again, the ban eventually lifted. Immigrants from other parts of Europe brought their Christmas traditions with them. The Germans with their Christmas trees, the Dutch with their Sinterklaas, later Santa Claus, the English with their Christmas carols. These traditions mingled and evolved in the American melting pot. Part 10: The Orthodox Difference. Now let's turn our attention to a fascinating quirk of the calendar that affects when Christmas is celebrated even today. Picture yourself in Russia on January 7th. While most of the Western world finished celebrating Christmas nearly 2 weeks ago, Orthodox Christians in Russia are just now celebrating the feast. Why? The answer involves calendars. Specifically, the difference between the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar. The Julian calendar was introduced by Julius Caesar in 45 BC. It was a vast improvement over previous Roman calendars, but it wasn't quite accurate. It calculated the year as 365.25 days long, but the actual solar year is about 365.2422 days. That small difference, about 11 minutes per year, adds up. By the 16th century, the Julian calendar was about 10 days out of sync with the seasons. In 1582, Pope Gregory XIII introduced a reform. The Gregorian calendar corrected the drift by skipping 10 days October 4. 1582 was followed by October 15, 1582, and by adjusting the leap year rules. Catholic countries adopted the new calendar immediately. But Orthodox churches, which had split from Rome in the Great Schism of 1054, rejected the Gregorian calendar as a Catholic innovation. They continued to use the Julian calendar. So did Protestant countries initially, though most eventually switched. By the 20th century, the Julian calendar was 13 days behind the Gregorian. Orthodox churches still using the Julian calendar, including the Russian, Serbian, Georgian, and others, celebrate Christmas on January 7th of the Gregorian calendar, which is December 25th on the Julian calendar. Other Orthodox churches, including the Greek, Romanian, and Bulgarian, switched to the Gregorian calendar for fixed feasts like Christmas while keeping the Julian for movable feasts like Easter. So they celebrate Christmas on December 25th, same as Western churches. It's a reminder that even something as seemingly fixed as a calendar date is more complex than it appears. The date, December 25th, means different things depending on which calendar you're using. Christians around the world all celebrate on what they consider December 25th, but they don't all celebrate on the same day. Imagine being an Orthodox Christian in the modern world, perhaps in Serbia or Russia. You experience a unique rhythm to the year. The secular world around you celebrates Christmas in December. The decorations go up, the music plays, the advertisements proclaim Christmas sale. But for you, Christmas is still ahead. You wait until January 7th for your celebration, your church services, your special meals. There's something countercultural about this, something that reminds you that faith operates on its own schedule, not the world's. Part 11: The Medieval Flowering. Let's travel now to medieval Europe, to the centuries between roughly 500 and 1500 AD, when Christmas became elaborated into something rich and complex. Picture a village in England in the year 1300. December is cold and dark. Most of the year involves hard agricultural labor, but winter brings a pause. The fields are sleeping. Animals are sheltered. This is a time for community, for gathering indoors around fires, for storytelling and song. Christmas becomes a season, not just a day. It begins with Advent, 4 weeks of preparation and anticipation. Then comes Christmas Eve and Christmas Day itself. In medieval times, Christmas lasted for 12 days, culminating in Epiphany on January 6th, hence the song, The 12 Days of Christmas. During this season, ordinary life was suspended. No one worked. Courts didn't meet. Even feudal obligations were relaxed. Lords hosted great feasts for their vassals and servants. The wealthy gave gifts to the poor. Mystery plays were performed, dramatizing the story of Jesus' birth for a largely illiterate population. Music flourished. Many of our oldest Christmas carols date from this period. Good King Wenceslas tells the story of a 10th century duke who went out in winter to give alms to a poor peasant. The holly and the ivy uses symbolism that's part Christian, part pagan. In Dulci Jubilo mixes Latin and German in a joyful celebration of the Nativity. The church developed elaborate liturgies for the season. Midnight Mass on Christmas Eve, the first Mass of Christmas, became a cherished tradition. The Christmas morning service focused on the birth in Bethlehem. Churches were decorated with evergreens, candles, and nativity scenes. The nativity scene itself was popularized by St. Francis of Assisi, who in 1223 created a live nativity with animals and actors to help people better understand the Christmas story. Imagine standing in a great Gothic cathedral on Christmas Eve, sometime in the 1400s. The stone walls soar upward into darkness. Candles flicker throughout the space, creating pools of warm light. The smell of incense fills the air. The choir sings in Latin, their voices echoing off the vaulted ceiling. It's cold, you can see your breath, but the beauty of the moment transcends physical discomfort. This is the night when God became human, when heaven touched earth. The solemnity and joy of the liturgy drive that truth home. For medieval people, the date of December 25th was simply when Christmas was. They didn't question it, didn't debate its origins. It was part of the rhythm of the year, as fixed as the seasons. The historical question, why December 25th, would have seemed strange to them. Christmas was on December 25th because it had always been on December 25th, as far back as anyone could remember. Part 12, the Victorian Revival. Now let's jump forward several centuries, to England in the 1840s. The Puritan suppression of Christmas is long over, but Christmas has diminished somewhat from its medieval glory. It's still celebrated, but often as a minor holiday, and the festivities are sometimes rowdy and secular rather than religious and family-centered. Then comes Queen Victoria and her German husband, Prince Albert. They popularized many Christmas traditions that we now take for granted, particularly the Christmas tree. In 1848, a drawing of the royal family gathered around a decorated Christmas tree is published in the Illustrated London News. Suddenly, everyone wants a Christmas tree. Charles Dickens publishes A Christmas Carol in 1843. It's an immediate sensation. Dickens's vision of Christmas as a time of generosity, family togetherness, goodwill to all captures the public imagination. The book helps transform Christmas into a primarily domestic holiday focused on children and family rather than on public festivities and drinking. Picture a London family in 1850, perhaps a shopkeeper and his wife and their 3 children. They've just acquired a small evergreen tree and placed it in their parlor. They decorate it with candles, ribbons, and a few homemade ornaments. The children are beside themselves with excitement. On Christmas Eve, the family gathers around the tree. The father reads from A Christmas Carol. The mother has prepared a special meal. Simple gifts are exchanged, perhaps an orange, a book, a hand-knitted scarf. This might not sound revolutionary to us, but it represented a shift. Christmas was becoming more private, more sentimental, more focused on creating magical moments for children. The religious element remained. The family would certainly attend church on Christmas morning, but it was now balanced with domestic joy and secular traditions. These Victorian innovations spread throughout the English-speaking world. Christmas cards became popular, allowing people to send season's greetings to distant friends and family. Christmas carols were collected and published. Santa Claus evolved from various European traditions into the jolly, red-suited figure we know today. Department stores began creating elaborate Christmas displays to attract shoppers. The date of December 25th provided the anchor for all these traditions. It was the fixed point around which the season revolved. In an industrializing society where many people worked in factories and followed rigid schedules, Christmas became a precious break, a time when clocks mattered less, when families reconnected, when the ordinary rules of life were suspended for a few days. Part 13. Christmas around the world. Let yourself imagine Christmas as a traveler, adapting to each new culture it encounters, while maintaining that central date of December 25th. In Ethiopia, Christmas, called Ghana, is celebrated on January 7th, following the Julian calendar, with a ceremony that lasts 3 hours. Worshippers wear traditional white garments called shamas. The day is spent in church, fasting until 3 p.m., then gathering for a meal of spicy stew. In Mexico, the celebration begins on December 16th with Las Posadas, a 9-day series of processions reenacting Mary and Joseph's search for lodging. Each night, families go door to door singing, eventually being welcomed in for celebration. On Christmas Eve, there are elaborate nativity scenes called nacimientos, and at midnight, fireworks explode and bells ring to celebrate Jesus' birth. In the Philippines, Christmas season begins in September, as soon as months ending in "ber" arrive. The celebration is a unique blend of Spanish Catholic tradition and Filipino culture. Giant star-shaped lanterns called paroles hang everywhere. On Christmas Eve, families attend Misa de Gallo, Rooster's Mass, at dawn. The celebration continues through January, making the Filipino Christmas season the longest in the world. In Japan, where Christians are a small minority, Christmas has been adopted as a secular holiday. December 25th is not a public holiday, but Christmas Eve has become associated with romance, and Christmas Day with eating KFC, thanks to a successful marketing campaign in the 1970s and Christmas cake. In Australia and New Zealand, Christmas falls in midsummer. Imagine celebrating on a hot beach, having a barbecue, perhaps swimming in the ocean. Some Australians sing Six White Boomers about kangaroos pulling Santa's sleigh instead of jingle bells. The December 25th date remains, but the winter symbolism we've discussed simply doesn't apply. It's a reminder that Christmas has transcended its seasonal origins. In modern Israel, Christian Arabs and Armenian, Ethiopian, and Orthodox Christians each celebrate Christmas on different dates according to their traditions. Walk through Jerusalem in December and January, and you might encounter Christmas celebrations several times, each with its own character, its own liturgy, its own date, but all commemorating the same event, the birth of a Jewish child in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago. Part 14. The Modern Understanding. Now bring yourself to the present day. We live in an age of historical consciousness, of scholarly research, of questioning inherited traditions. We know more about the origins of December 25th than any previous generation. Does this knowledge change anything? For some people, yes. There are Christians who, troubled by the pagan associations or the lack of biblical support for December 25th, choose not to celebrate Christmas at all. Some celebrate only Easter, as the earliest Christians did. Others celebrate Jesus' birth, but on a different date that they believe is more historically accurate. For most Christians, however, The historical complexity surrounding December 25th doesn't diminish the holiday. They understand that the date was chosen, not divinely revealed. They know about the winter solstice, the unconquered sun, the calculation traditions, all of it, and they celebrate anyway. Why? Because Christmas has become more than its origins. It has accumulated 2,000 years of meaning. It has been prayed over, sung about, painted, sculpted, dramatized, and loved by countless generations. It has inspired acts of charity, moments of family connection, and profound religious experience. The date itself, December 25th, has become sanctified not by its historical accuracy, but by the weight of tradition, by the repeated devotion of believers across centuries and continents. Think about any meaningful tradition in your own life. Perhaps a family recipe that's been passed down for generations. The exact origins might be fuzzy. Maybe grandma adapted it from a cookbook, or maybe it came from an immigrant ancestor, or maybe it evolved over time through trial and error. Does that uncertainty diminish your pleasure in the food? Does it make the tradition less meaningful? Usually not. The meaning comes from the act of making it together, from the memories associated with it, from the way it connects you to your past and to your loved ones. The same is true, in a way, for Christmas and December 25th. Part 15. The Spiritual Truth Beyond History. Let's sit quietly for a moment with a deeper question. What does it mean that the exact date of Jesus' birth is unknown? One could see this as a deficiency. Wouldn't it be better if we knew for certain? But consider another possibility. Perhaps the lack of a specific date is itself meaningful. If the Gospels had said Jesus was born on December 25th, 4 BC, then that date alone would be holy. It would be the anniversary of a specific, unrepeatable event. But because no date was given, every day can, in a sense, become Christmas. Christ is born anew in every believer, in every act of love, in every moment of grace. The mystics understood this. Meister Eckhart, a 14th century German theologian, wrote, "What good is it to me if this eternal birth of the divine Son takes place unceasingly, but does not take place within myself? And what good is it to me if Mary is full of grace if I am not also full of grace?" Christmas on December 25th is the annual reminder, the public celebration, the communal acknowledgement. But the spiritual reality it points to, Emmanuel, God with us, transcends any calendar date. Picture a snow-covered landscape at night. In a small house, a single candle burns in the window. That candle is lit on December 25th, but the light it represents, the light that shines in the darkness, burns year-round. The date focuses our attention, gives us a moment to stop and remember, but the truth is always present. This is why Christians throughout history have found meaning in December 25th, regardless of whether it's the correct date historically. They're not celebrating a birthday party, trying to match the actual anniversary. They're celebrating an ongoing reality, using the date as a doorway into deeper truth. Part 16. The Beauty of Not Knowing. There's something beautifully human about the story of December 25th. It reminds us that even the most sacred traditions are, in part, human creations, that people wrestling with incomplete information, trying to honor something greater than themselves, made choices and compromises and calculations that have echoed through millennia. The early Christians who settled on December 25th were doing their best. They used the tools available to them, scripture, tradition, reason, symbolism. They made mistakes, perhaps. They were influenced by their culture, certainly. But they were also sincere, devout, and thoughtful. And their choice has held. 20 centuries later, billions of people mark December 25th as Christmas. Not because it's demonstrably correct, but because tradition has a weight and a beauty of its own. Let yourself appreciate the humility required to say, we don't actually know when Jesus was born, but we'll celebrate on this day because it's meaningful to us, because it carries rich symbolism, because it connects us to countless generations of believers who celebrated on this same day. In our modern world, we often privilege certainty over mystery. We want facts, data, proof, but some of the most important truths can't be pinned down that precisely. The exact date of Jesus' birth is, in the grand scheme, a small detail compared to the meaning of his life and teachings. The story of how December 25th became Christmas is a story about humans trying to mark time, to create meaning, to connect the sacred and the ordinary. It's imperfect, as human things are, but it's also beautiful, as human things can be. Part 17. The unifying power of a date. Consider this remarkable fact. Despite all the diversity within Christianity, the splits between East and West, the fracturing during the Reformation, the countless denominations and theological disputes, most Christians still celebrate Christmas on or near December 25th. Orthodox churches using the Julian calendar celebrate on January 7th, but they consider it December 25th on their calendar. It's the same date, just measured differently. Armenian Christians celebrate on January 6th, one of the ancient alternatives, but the vast majority of the world's 2 billion Christians mark December 25th. In an age of Christian division, this shared date is a point of unity. A Catholic in Brazil, a Lutheran in Germany, an Anglican in Kenya, a Methodist in Korea, all celebrate on the same day. They might understand Christmas somewhat differently. Their liturgies and traditions vary, but on December 25th, Gregorian calendar, they're all commemorating the same mystery, the Word made flesh, dwelling among us. Imagine the planet on Christmas Eve. As the earth turns and darkness falls across different time zones, Christmas begins. In Auckland, New Zealand, services start. Then Sydney, then Tokyo, then Mumbai, then Moscow, then Berlin, then London, then New York, then Los Angeles, then Honolulu. The celebration rolls around the world like a wave. Millions upon millions of people, speaking thousands of languages from countless cultures, all pausing on this one day to remember a birth in Bethlehem. Whatever you believe about religion, it's an extraordinary phenomenon. This shared moment of attention, of celebration, for believers, worship. The date December 25th makes this global unity possible. It's a fixed point that everyone can gather around. Without it, Christmas would be even more fragmented than it already is, with each community celebrating according to its own calculations and traditions. Part 18. Christmas in the secular world. Now consider a curious modern development. December 25th has become important far beyond Christianity. It's a global cultural phenomenon. In countries where Christians are a small minority, December 25th is still often recognized. It might not be a religious holiday, but it's acknowledged. Shopping centers put up decorations. International businesses close. Even in communist countries that officially suppressed religion, the date maintained a shadow presence. Christmas has been commercialized, certainly. The weeks leading up to December 25th represent the busiest shopping season in many countries. Retailers depend on Christmas sales. The holiday has become entangled with consumerism in ways that trouble many thoughtful people, including many Christians. But perhaps there's something else happening too. Perhaps the appeal of Christmas, the lights in darkness, the generosity, the focus on family and children, the sense that this time is special, speaks to something universal. People need celebration, need ritual, need moments when ordinary time stops and we acknowledge something greater. December 25th has become that moment for much of the world, whether people understand its religious significance or not. It's a strange, unplanned outcome of those ancient decisions about when to celebrate Christ's birth. The date has escaped its origins and become something bigger. This troubles some Christians who feel their holy day has been hijacked, but others see it as a form of success. The values at the heart of Christmas, love, generosity, peace, goodwill, spreading even to those who don't share the underlying faith. Part 19. Personal meaning. Let's bring this back to something more intimate. Whatever December 25th means historically or culturally, it also carries personal meaning for millions of individuals. Think of the memories associated with Christmas. Perhaps you remember Christmas mornings from childhood, the excitement of running downstairs, the sight of presents under a tree, the smell of a special breakfast cooking, the feeling that this day was magical in a way other days weren't. Or perhaps your strongest Christmas memories are more recent, a Christmas when your own children were young, watching them experience the wonder you once felt. Or a Christmas shared with someone you love, made precious by their presence. Or maybe a difficult Christmas, the first one after losing someone or during a period of hardship, when the celebration felt hollow, but you went through the motions anyway and found unexpected comfort in the familiar rituals. These memories cluster around December 25th. The date becomes a bookmark in your personal history. You remember not just what year something happened, but which Christmas. That was the Christmas when becomes a way of organizing the story of your life. For people who have emigrated, leaving behind their original culture and language, Christmas and December 25th can become an anchor to their heritage. The specific traditions they practice on that day, the foods they prepare, the carols they sing, the way they decorate, connect them to their homeland, to their childhood, to the people and places they've left behind. In this sense, the question, why is Christmas on December 25th, has a deeply personal answer. Because that's when my family celebrates, when my community gathers, when I pause to remember what matters most. The historical reasons we've explored remain true, but they're not the whole truth. December 25th means what it means to you because of the experiences you've had on that date, the traditions you've participated in, the ways it has marked time in your life. Part 20, the mystery remains. As we near the end of our journey through this question, let's acknowledge that in some ways, the mystery remains. We've explored calculations and compromises, pagan festivals and church politics, winter solstice symbolism and scriptural interpretation. We've seen how December 25th emerged from a complex interplay of factors over several centuries. We've traced how this date spread around the world and accumulated meaning. But there's still something we can't fully explain. Why did this particular date, out of all the possibilities, become so entrenched? Why has it endured when other dates fell away? Why does it continue to resonate with billions of people? You could point to institutional power. The Roman Church promoted December 25th, and what Rome decided carried weight. You could emphasize the symbolism of light returning after the longest night. You could talk about the calculation tradition or the convenience of aligning with existing festivals. All of these played a role, but they don't fully account for the staying power of December 25th. Other dates had institutional support too. Other dates had symbolic meaning, yet December 25th prevailed and has held for 2,000 years. Perhaps some things can't be fully explained by historical analysis. Perhaps tradition has its own logic, its own life, that transcends the reasons for its origin. The great Christian writer G.K. Chesterton once wrote, "Tradition means giving votes to the most obscure of all classes, our ancestors. It is the democracy of the dead." By celebrating Christmas on December 25th, we're joining a vast company, not just the living, but all those who have gone before us, all those who have marked this date as holy, who have gathered on this day to sing and pray and celebrate. We're connecting ourselves to something larger than our own moment, our own understanding. There's beauty in that. There's also humility. We're admitting that we don't have to understand everything, that we can participate in traditions whose full meaning we might not grasp, that there's wisdom in doing what countless generations have done before us. Closing, rest in the question. So why is Christmas on December 25th? You now know the answer is not simple. It's not because that's Jesus's actual birthday. We don't know when that was. It's not only because of pagan festivals, though they played a role. It's not solely because of scholarly calculations, though those mattered too. Christmas is on December 25th because early Christians, working with incomplete information and diverse traditions, gradually settled on this date, because it carried rich symbolism, the light of the world born at the darkest time of year, because Rome promoted it and other churches eventually aligned, because it sat near the winter solstice and could absorb and transform existing celebrations, because the calculation tradition pointed to it, because it became traditional, and tradition has tremendous power. Most of all, Christmas is on December 25th because for 2,000 years, Christians have celebrated on that day. Generation after generation, in every corner of the world, in countless languages and cultures, believers have gathered on December 25th to commemorate the Nativity. That continuous practice, that unbroken chain of celebration, has given the date a meaning that transcends its murky historical origins. The shepherds watching their flocks by night, whenever that actually occurred, heard the angels sing glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. Those words echo still on December 25th each year, not because that's when it happened, but because that's when we pause to listen. Let yourself rest now in this understanding. The question has been asked and explored. The mystery remains a mystery, but you've glimpsed its outlines. You've walked through centuries of history, through debates and calculations, through the spread of a tradition across the world. And perhaps in the end, the exact reasons matter less than the result. December 25th is a day when much of humanity pauses, when families gather, when believers worship, when even those outside the faith are touched by themes of light and hope and peace. That seems like a good day for Christmas, whatever the historical reasons that led us here. Rest now. Let the story settle over you like snow falling on a quiet night. Close your eyes and drift, knowing that some questions have answers woven from many threads, and that's okay. That's enough. Sleep well.